I think I'm just gonna keep an eye on YouTube real quick to make sure it's actually going through. But I did hit the live button, so I think we're good. Because once I actually have a much more convenient setup for all this, it should be fine. But yeah, looks like we're live. Sweet. Ah, never exactly a great setup for me, but otherwise, yeah. Yeah, welcome to Gab Hominem, everybody. I'm glad to see you all again. And this week is going to be an interesting little interview that I've got because I've got the wonderful Patrick Mealey, I assume.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yep. And so Patrick is a fairly known and fairly well-respected voice actor in every place I've seen. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's really happy to be here.
So, uh, oh wow, I don't think I ever actually covered with you exactly what Gab Hominem actually talks about with, right?
A little bit. I think we talked about it briefly on the email and in the DMs and stuff. I don't know if we really went full in depth, but it's kind of like it kind of gave me the basic gist of it.
Yeah, because it's sort of like a get to know, get to know the person and having some experiences shared, mostly for the benefit of people that are looking to pursue the same type of path for themselves, whether it's voice acting, animation, directing, whatever the case it could be.
Okay.
For the most part, it's very based in the entertainment realm. And like I said, it goes into that list, but it also includes like Twitch streamers, YouTubers, all kinds of other fun stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, it gets pretty fun. I've had people who come on and talk about things, and it gets into some really interesting conversations. And with things improving as they are on my end, quality wise, I think I'm actually doing a little bit better with my own learning experiences, which is the whole point of the show. And for
Yeah.
you, having you on the show is an interesting experience because you're not only a voice actor and singer as your as front line on your Twitter bio.
Right.
But you've also done work as a casting director for other projects.
That's correct. I've been doing that. I've been doing mostly casting and voice direction for about a year now. I started doing it probably around, oh gosh, February of 2020 because like I was doing it for NaNoReno a little bit and then some minor things. And then the big opportunity to be a casting director came from doing at the time I was working on on a little thing called Wild Card, which I'm sure many people have seen. It's kind of grown a lot in the recent months. I got into the show around early 2020 and became really good friends with the creator, Alex Barari. He's one of the most wonderful creators I've gotten the chance to work with. So down to earth, so kind, very supportive too. And we became really good friends. And he and I were talking about like the process of what, because he really wanted to get this out on Kickstarter and get it going. And he had tons of characters that he wanted to bring in for the pilot episode. And he and I were discussing it, and I said, "Do you want me to maybe help you out, like with with this new round?" And he said, "Yes, that would be great." Uh, and so around July, I think we put it out there. We got like a bunch of, oh my God, we got like probably I think 600 emails. And at the time, like this is my first time ever really doing something so huge like this. So I was so caught off guard and unprepared. But it was a big learning experience. I learned a lot from it and brought on some really great talent for it. So I'm really blessed in that regard. And I thank Alex very much for giving me that opportunity to really trusting me with such a big opportunity to bring talent into this project and really get it out there to the public. And I'm really excited now because the pilot's kind of in production right now and it's really really going to be cool. I bet it's going to be amazing.
I'm sure it will be because I've seen a couple bits of it before. Because I remember throwing in my own hat into the ring when the casting call came around. But then I saw all the talent that came around with it, and I'm like, okay, this is looking pretty good.
Yeah,
Um,
it was shocking, honestly. Like when I saw when I was getting all the emails, because like I would get the emails and I put like the files in the Google Drive to just kind of like get things I would get them into Google Drive because like a problem that casting directors kind of fall into is that if you open too many audio files in on Gmail, then it Google thinks you're doing something suspicious and they'll lock you out. So
Oh,
we had yeah, it sucks. I encountered that on the first round. So the second round, I had to really make sure that when I was opening these files that they came out properly and I could hear them. So and also waiting for the deadline is also a good thing because that way you don't get biased and you can go forward and just kind of make sure you got the right mindset of what you want for your characters, and you'll have to listen to them all. It's painful because you have to go through, gosh, I think like hundreds and hundreds of files, but I think that when you do, it's it's really cool.
right.
But yeah, it was a really great experience, and it really helped me a lot on my other casting endeavors. Other projects that I've done include Stygia, which is a actually was my first ever big voice directing gig. It was for a animation done by a creator named Des Diaz and Timber Katiga. I had worked with Timber on their series called Onirodenia, and I had been talking with them about stuff like that. So they brought me to help with Stygia. That was really cool. Also, Lucid 9 Inciting Incident by Falling Snow Studios, which I'm doing with my friend Jacob Wilson. I I mean I play one of the major characters, Masato Kuragane, and I also do co-directing like with it and stuff like that. But that's a really big thing very recently that I'm very proud of. And then two other things. Nori and Zin, which is a little animated series that I've been working on since last summer. Really happy for that. And then I got something else in the works, which I can't say too much about,
Mhm.
but you'll hopefully see it out on Twitter very soon. That's a little sneak preview for anybody out there watching right now. So keep an eye out.
It's always going to be very fun. I don't know what it is when we drop those little hints that we just can't say anything about. But for some reason, it seems humans are very attracted to that just mystery of what could it possibly be.
Yeah, especially because, you've seen especially on Twitter, like, I see people saying, like, "Got something coming very soon," or things like that, like, they flock to it because, that's the thing, like, as voice actors, we always want opportunity of any kind, and taking that chance, it sparks our interest, especially if it's something, like a video game, an animation, or even an audio drama. It's just really fun, uh, to really go to that, and I think, like, I have a tendency to hype it up a lot, especially, like, maybe sometimes I think I might hype it up a little too much because, like, and this is something I kind of admit to my a fault of my own is that like I have a tendency to really get overly excited about things, and I can maybe say some things that don't really shouldn't be said. But I've been working on that. But it's been good. But I think also when you hype something up a lot, you can really also get the public's interest into it, especially because VO Twitter is a large landscape of people, and if you
Oh,
can get it out to that crowd, then you can really bring in some talent that are trustworthy, who have good audio quality, have good acting chops, and can really bring a lot to it
yeah.
overall.
I it was just I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I had a little bit of the production crew for the Lackadaisy short on this show, and
Hmm.
it involved Fable, who's the director for it, one of the animators, Katie, and a couple of the voice actors, Michael Kovac and Brad Gareth, I think his name
Bradley
was.
Gareth,
Yes,
yeah. Oh, those two are lovely.
they are, and they meant. I remember they mentioned something that is now no longer in existence. It's the VAA. I think it's the Voice Acting Association or something, or Voice Acting
Voice
Alliance.
Acting Alliance,
Yeah.
yeah, the Voice Acting Alliance. That was like a big community that had been around. It kind of went back to like I think 2010, back when like in the earliest parts of the VO scene. I never was on it because I didn't start acting until I was 18, and because of that, like by that point, like the whole site had just kind of died out, and then Casting Call Club came out, the revived Voice Acting Club came out, and then other avenues like voices.com and all that kind of started existing.
Yeah.
So I never got the chance to be on that site, though I have heard from people who were on it like 10 years ago that it was okay to be on because you'd have like good stuff to work on. you could have different projects that you could start off with and then lead from there. And occasionally you get some gems in there, like some really decent original work, if they were available. Um, but I missed out.
Yeah, so did I, because I only got started this last year. Actually, it was around September, August or September, when a friend of mine and this other podcast that I'm a part of, he approaches me and he's like, "We're doing this JoJo fan dub thing. You want to try out for Mista Guido?" And I'm like, "Sure. I've got nothing else to do, and I've got this cheap condenser mic that I borrowed from my brother that I may as well put to use." Never heard. Neither of us ever heard from that project ever again. We don't know if the
Yeah,
guy moved on with other people or if he just dropped off the face of the earth.
that happens a lot, I notice, like, a lot of projects, especially these beginner projects, and I think that this is a thing that a lot of us need to experience when we start off. Like, you're gonna get into projects that probably will never see the light of day, or will get, like, 1 video out, and then it's just gone completely.
Yeah,
A
this
and
was.
and that sucks a lot because you really are excited for it, and
Oh
then it's
yeah.
just like, "Nope, goodbye." Like, I
This is I had actually Stamper was another person I had talked to, and he actually said you'll do a lot, so many recordings for people, but some of them they'll never go anywhere because they decided it's too much, it's not worth it, or they just don't have the resources or time, whatever the case. It just a lot of it you will see never actually sees a lot of day.
Yeah, and, it's funny, I remember, 2 years ago, I got into this project with my friends, John Patnode and, Jacob Wilson, Ryan Doe, Wes Hass, and a couple others. We found this project via CCC. It was called, it was originally called Relic Delaney, and then it was renamed Chromosol, like, midway through, and we auditioned for it because we thought it looked pretty cool, and then we got in, and, we were really excited because it was a really cool, like, kinda action RPG thing, and we made friends with a lot of the people in the cast, but then suddenly, I think 2 weeks into it, the creator just said, "Hey guys, I'm not really feeling this project anymore, so, I'm just gonna shut down the server. Goodbye." And I was like, "Okay, screw you then."
Jesus.
Like, we were so excited, and then you did that, like, and honestly, I understand if, like, maybe a person is going through a lot in their personal life and everything, and that's understandable, and they could maybe make that message. But with this guy, it just was it was so rude how, like, he just kind of wrote that message. It very much seemed like, I'm not feeling it anymore. Yeah. And I don't like that personally. It really felt, like I said, it felt super rude, and it felt really just, um, it just really, I don't want to say condescending, just kind of like
Inconsiderate, maybe.
inconsiderate. Yeah, that's the proper way of saying it.
Yeah,
Like,
I haven't had that happen to me yet. The closest I've had was one of the earliest roles that I had actually gotten, because I haven't gotten very many so far. But I got a role in a sort of a fan spin-off of Code Lyoko. But they
uh-huh.
were using Roblox for the animation base. And I got a role as this teacher, and I'm like, okay, this is going to be kind of fun. I got a couple episodes of lines out, but then a few weeks ago they said, "You guys, I'm just after talking with a couple of the other guys in the crew, I cannot keep up with this anymore. I'm dropping this project." And he's focusing on that. We're all more than welcome to be a part of that if we want to go for it, but.
Mhm.
At least he didn't just say, "I'm removing the server. I'm just kind of like leaving as it is, kind of hang out with you guys." That's about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that, like, it seems like he was a lot more respectful about it and more considerate, which I do give him credit for that.
Hmm.
And I understand maybe if, like, I understand if, like I said, I understand if, like, they're going through something in their personal life, or they're just really in a huge rut, like, with their creativity.
Or even just
Um,
burnout.
yeah, like, burnout is something that a lot of us have dealt with. I speak from experience. I've dealt with burnout very frequently. I think the worst case I ever dealt with burnout was probably around last summer, because I was pushing myself way too hard
Ooh.
with my auditions, with my acting. Like, I wasn't giving myself a break, and it's because I was like, partially because, like, at the time I just graduated college, and this is like during the beginning of the pandemic, so there was not a lot of opportunity for a day job of any kind, at least at the time. So I thought I really have to put myself out there with this and just work hard. And I was working, like I was basically like just putting out work after work after work, but then eventually it like caught up with me and I got so exhausted. Um, and I say this like as advice to anybody out there, like really pace yourself because if you constantly put stuff out, you're gonna like crash and burn, which I don't want anybody to go through because I think it is real and it's not comfortable to deal with. It really can really get you like really exhausted.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a story of that.
Yeah, it's never really a fun thing to have to deal with, but well, you usually try to make do somehow, and usually if you need to take a break because your mental health is pretty important. um,
Yeah.
so I guess with that, I think I'm gonna start going into a couple of questions that I usually have for my guests, and I'm gonna start with something
Okay.
that kind of goes pretty far back, because I like to try to establish a little bit of context because some stories can be a little similar or just like not very relevant in some cases. But the question I've got for you to start would be, just where did you actually come from? What kind of places have you been raised in, and have those places have had any influence on you as to where you are today?
Um, oh gosh, that's a good question. Well, I was born in Newark, Delaware. I've been living here most of my life. S- Scratch that, all my life. um, and I think growing up, like I was kind of a very interesting child in a lot of ways because I was born in with two parents that were kind of in like the more of a medical field. Like my dad's a funeral director, my mom is a nurse, and I was kind of more of the I was the third child in the family, like I was the youngest child, and my I always really think as a kid, when you have several kids in the family, like a lot of them kind of fulfill certain roles. Like you have one who's more the jock, one that's more like the intellectual. I think for me, I was the artistic kid of the family. Like I was always growing up doing something that was creative, drawing, telling stories, um, playing music, watching loads and loads of movies and TV. Uh, I think like I would go and take every single VHS tape that I owned, and I would constantly be rewatching it every single hour of every day. Like especially if it was a film that was rented this is back when video stores were a big thing. I don't know if I'm sure there's several people in this audience who grew up during the time when VHS tapes were still a thing. So I hope you all got to experience that because yeah, I grew up in that time period. Um, and I think it's funny because like everybody always asks me like, do you feel like the place you grew up really influenced you in some way? I'd say I don't really think it did. I think that it was just the fact that I've always been a creative person. I feel like my environment as well was just kind of like I wouldn't say it was constricting, but I was like the oddball kind of in the family because like, I was the one that was more artistic and kind of out there with what I would do. And I never was like I was always encouraged to be that way, especially from my grandfather. He was one of the biggest people that saw a lot of that kind of artistic side with me, and I think he always encouraged it. My mom always encouraged it, and my dad did. And having my two sisters, they encouraged it. Even as we got older, like I started and they started kind of going into their own paths. I found my own kind of in a more creative way. Um and I think like that's kind of how it led to that eventual desire to get into an avenue of something artistic, and that led to where I am now.
Hmm. A lot of influences from other people, and actually, one thing I noted is that this is the second time, at least as far as I can remember, that I've heard that a grandfather has actually been a pretty big influence in how somebody turned out.
Yeah, like my grandfather was one of those people that he was somebody that he was kind of similar to my dad in a lot of ways, but I think he also could see that there was something, inside me that could really fulfill things creatively, especially when I would go to the dinner table and I talk about these movies that I was watching or these books I was reading or things like that. Like I was a huge, besides watching movies and TV, I'm also a huge bibliophile. Like I love reading. Um, and I think he saw that a lot. And it's funny because my dad was always kind of pushing me to get into sports and everything, and I was just like, no, I don't really want to. Like, it's I was the kid. I'm kind of one of those people that if you ask me anything about sports, I'm just gonna be like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, my grandpa, he was one of those really big people that really helped me to get into it. And I think it was it, this is kind of more emotional thing, but like when because he passed away back in 2015.
Mm.
When I was last talking to him before his passing, he asked me because like we have a funeral home family business that's been going on, and we talked about it a little bit, and he said like, do you feel like you want to go into it? And I said, I don't really think I do. And he said, if you don't want to, then that's fine. You don't need to. You should follow what you feel like you are comfortable doing and go forward with that. And and so I've kind of felt that I've kind of followed that path ever since, and I think like I think it's been treating me very well in some ways.
I'd say so. It seems like you've actually been following it with some, with some pretty good dedication to it, because it seems like
Yeah.
it's something you really wanted to do.
Yeah, although it's kind of shifted in certain avenues, especially from what I initially planned on doing to where I am now.
Well, it's sometimes experiences will do that to people.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I actually wanted to be a veterinarian because I loved animals so much. I even had the chance to be a had the chance to volunteer at a veterinary hospital. It was immediately next door to my high school, and that was really fun. Got to work with animals, got to see how things work.
Hmm.
Just a lot of different learning experiences, helping out with some surgeries to help an animal. Uh, I did a couple of stupid things while I was there, not with people, but with resources. Nothing drug related, just sneaking candy too much, basically. um,
Yeah.
but that kind of like led to that. But I was still interested in being a veterinarian, so I kept taking the classes. Future Farmers of America is a lot of what
Hmm.
was required for it. But then I graduate high school, I go to community college, and I see the unit count that's required for a transfer to one of the top veterinary colleges in the area. And I look at that and I go, I can't afford that right now. I'm gonna
Yeah.
stick with general ed. And so sometime later, I go and spend, I think it was like a month with my uncle somewhere in the Santa Cruz area. And a lot of what I did was working on cars with him. Made a
Hmm.
couple of repairs and, parts replacements and all that. Fun stuff. Learned a little bit about, learned how to fell a tree, which was a terrifying but valuable learning experience for me. It's like, definitely not for me, and I know the dangers, so I want to be careful about that with other people.
Kind of went really, you just kind of figured it out, and you're like, yeah, no,
I
just
saw how
ran away.
hard that thing hit the ground, and I think I even watched it punch through just a stray plywood board that was just sitting around on the hillside. I'm like, yeah, that's why I need to run away from that as fast as possible.
Oh gosh.
But after coming out of that, little trip, staying with him for a while, I decided, I kind of want to learn more about working on cars, and now I'm capable of doing some basic maintenance on my car. Meanwhile, I'm working in labor and trying to figure out my avenues to going to like aerospace engineering because I love how
Cool.
things work.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Kind of
But
finding
yeah,
that path.
yeah. But my interest in doing entertainment just kind of spawned out of the blue. It kind of started with Hasbin Hotel when that finally released. For
Right.
the
Yeah.
longest time, I was resisting that because it just kept showing up, and I'm the type of person like I have my own little personal policy of every time an ad shows up on a YouTube video, especially when it interrupts it, I decide to boycott whatever product that ad was for at least a month. And so with Hasbin Hotel constantly showing up on my recommended list, I'm like, "Oh, dude, God damn it, just keep
Just
skipping it
just get
until
just get premium, honestly, then you
yeah,
don't have to deal with ads.
I
Like,
did. I
I
know, but I
finally
don't like being
decided to do it.
coerced and forced into doing things like that. I'll do it
It's
when
not
it,
that
yeah.
expensive, like, honestly, I mean, just like it's like, what, $10 a month? That's easy. Um, I think it's I don't know, I think it's less than that, I'm not sure. I've had it for a long time, I don't know if they've changed the price.
I
But
don't know.
yeah, like, going off, like, Has Been Hotel, I mean, that's been like I think when it became a huge phenomenon and like when it was finally released after being in production for 2 years, 3 years, I think, I don't even remember.
Something like that.
Um, yeah, it just blew up and exploded onto the scene, and suddenly people were eating it up with a spoon. And then Busy Pop produced Hell of a Boss, which is still ongoing right
Mm-hmm.
now. And I think like it just kind of like created this big explosion of fans across the board, as well as I've noticed a lot of new voice actors have kind of hit the scene because of it,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of them were inspired by all the performers. They were inspired by Elsie. They were inspired by Michael. Um, what's the guy who plays Alistair? I can't not remember
Ed
his name for the
Bosco.
life of me. Ed Bosco. They were
Yeah.
inspired by Ed and Michelle Marie. They were inspired by all of them, and I think it gave them like a really good avenue to like start working in a lot of ways. And it's funny because I hit the scene like around 2016, like right as I think Has Been was starting, but I was not like as big on it at the time. But then like when I started really getting into it and I saw like when that was coming out, I'm like, oh my god, this looks really good. I'm gonna like keep I'm gonna like really see this when it comes out. And then when it came out, I was like, this is so good. Like I was really it fulfilled a lot of my favorite loves because I love adult like animation, but I also really love like musical theater, and I think it
Mm-hmm.
really uh encapsulated that love for me. So getting to see that was beyond exciting, and everybody did a great job. Like
Oh yeah.
Michael, Elsie, Jill, Ed, Michelle, like everybody did a
It was
great job.
such a fun thing to watch, but for
It
the
is.
crazy thing for me is Hasbin Hotel itself is not the inspiration point. All it did is it led me in the in the path that got me into it to begin with, because I saw it because I was bored and had nothing else to watch. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll watch it. And then I, watched it, got into it, and I've decided to find a, some kind of fan Discord server just to, have people to socialize around it, because
Mhm.
you know, I'm sort of a bandwagon writer, but at the same time, it's just like, yeah, point A to point B, and then I'm hopping off. I'm not going to ride this all the way to the end. um,
Yeah.
I get into one server. It's not the has been fan cord that so many people have. It was actually another one that ended up getting shuttered because the person who was running it wasn't exactly the best type of person. Uh,
Oof.
yeah. But that server is where I met all of these people that decided to bring me into the fold of the other podcast that I'm in. And they're all I call them very close friends to me at this point. And like I said before, it was one of them that decided to ask me if I wanted to try out for the JoJo thing, and that's where I started getting into it again. Because I had tried it once
Mhm.
before for a Halo Machinima thing that lasted for like 3 episodes, and the guy completely disappeared.
That happens, honestly. I think
Yeah.
that was what year? Like 20 what year?
Uh, when I started again, it was 2020, but the first time I tried, I think it was like I don't remember exactly when. I think it was the 2011 or 2013 range.
Yeah, that happens because I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of people who were doing Halo Machinimas back in that time, and they said like sometimes you'd never get them off the ground. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's funny because when I think of Halo Machinimas, I always think of Red versus Blue, and I think about like that one random scene. I'm still trying to fully get into Red versus Blue. Like I'm more like a big fan of Ruby, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But like I remember this one scene where it's just like they get a tank. It's like we're getting a tank, dude. It's like you can't pick up chicks in a tank. Like I love that line
the,
so freaking much. It's just like you're more concerned about picking up chicks than you are about defeating the enemy. Dude, can you not worry about this right now?
and then Sarge with his absolute one-minded, just like I don't even know how to describe his personality in few words, but it's just like
Just interested in like just interested in sex. That's it.
Sarge was basically like Tucker with sex, but Sarge was more like take everything Tucker says with sex or anything suggestive like that, and it's everything to do with war.
Jesus
Because
Christ.
his favorite weapon is a shotgun. You'll pry this shotgun out of my cold dead hands. I'm like, this guy's great. The way he just throws everybody into battle, expecting them to just you know newborn zebra just learn how to walk within 5 seconds, just learn how to fight like a freaking savage within 5 seconds. Meanwhile, this was the part where I really enjoyed it the most is because the first like 7, 8 seasons were very dialogue heavy and all that. But
Mhm.
then at that point, they brought in Monty Ohm, the creator of RWBY, because they saw him with his Haloid video, which was fantastic. Action sequences one after another, and they brought him in, and that's where he started doing a lot of the action sequences for Red versus Blue in the later seasons. I think a couple seasons after he brought in, he pitched the idea of Ruby, and Ruby got off the ground from there. And
Yeah, Ruby, yeah, it really blew up super quickly, and I remember, I didn't start watching Ruby until probably late high school, but I remember, like, hearing so much about it from friends and, like, talking about it at school and things like that,
mhm,
so I started looking it up, and this is right I think this is the year after Monty passed away, so I kinda went into it with, not a hi I kept my expectations minimal because just I always like to be careful just in case I don't really like it, but then I watched it and, I was so blown away, especially by the first 2 seasons,
mhm,
and even though Monty passed away, there was like a still I still feel his presence throughout the show because he created that show and you can feel what he wanted in every single thing, and especially with when the animation style kind of evolved and it
mhm.
became more less kind of like I think the thing with the first 2 seasons is it was very MMD like with how the characters would move and everything, and it was kind of stiff. Like I always think of this one scene, it was from the second season where they're in the library and it's like what is the line? It's when Neptune, Sun's best friend is just like, hey, this is my friend Neptune. He's like, aren't libraries for reading? And then Ren's in the background. He's just like Ren's in the background. He's like, thank you. Like he's like, it's the way like they move. It was kind of like it kind of seemed a little stiff to me.
Mhm.
But then by the time they got to the third season, they improved that so much. And now like I just I've been watching I've been catching up with it now because I fell out of it for a while. It looks so vibrant. The movement is so fluid. I love it. And not only that, I have a friend of mine. Her name's Kaden Jensen. She actually is in one of the newer seasons. She's May Marigold, and she is just perfect. And I won't lie. Every time I hear, I'll go watch it, and I'll be like, "That's Kaden. That's Kaden." I've spoken with Kaden many a time, and I think she's one of the best actresses in the whole community, and she also really gives a lot to a performance. Like I speak from having heard her audition for multiple projects I put out there, and she gives 200% with every single audition I do. She goes like to town and doesn't like hesitate in any way, shape, or form.
That's the kind of
And
person really enjoys what they're
that's
doing.
yeah, like and speaking from a casting director standpoint, that's what I like to see. Like I want to see actors that really commit and will make the character their own. And sometimes like I encourage improvisation because I think that if you can make something with it that's very natural and very fluid, then I think you can really create a successful character. I mean, and ultimately it does come down to what the creator wants because the creator does have their vision of what the character is supposed to be. Um but and I do think that like if I show something to a creator and I say like how I feel about certain auditions, like I really like this person, they kind of like had something there. I think like what's cool is the creators I've worked with, they do keep those actors in mind for future things because they really feels a presence in them, and then they can see them maybe working not for this character but maybe for one in the future. So that's really the most rewarding thing about with casting is when you can even if you don't get to cast somebody that you really enjoyed, you will have them bookmarked for future things. And I have like tons of oh god, I think I have like so many actors bookmarked who have auditioned for my things, and I have their names down, and every time I see them like pop in, I'm so excited to hear like their new auditions for different projects because I know it's going to be awesome just from that feeling. um yeah, and it's cool as well, like, because I think, like, it kinda makes the listening process so much fun when you get to hear them, like, just go into town, and if there's an audition that can genuinely make me smile, then you've accomplished it, in my opinion.
Right. I've seen seen stories. I've heard some stories from other people who have worked with cast before. Like I've worked with Kennedy Phillips, who has his own audio drama, basically,
Mhm.
and he's told stories of like uh, some the amazing talent that they have in some of their voice actors and how fun it is to work with them, as well as when I talked with him, he also had he had his good friend Chris Moore, Um, Both of them were sound designers on Has-Been, but
Mhm.
on their own thing, they've got Magus Elgar, the audio drama that I mentioned. I'm actually quite a fan of it because I just find it so funny, and I'm a guy who very much values comedy. And it was interesting that he brought up how when Chris, because he's one of the voice actors on it as one of the main characters, when he first started doing lines for it, they were having trouble like getting him to put out different takes. Basically, like
Mhm.
one take is supposed to sound different from another, as a general rule of thumb for voice actors. And he just had trouble figuring out how to do that. So they made an arrangement like your payment will get you acting classes to get you going on this. And you can see, yeah, you can hear how his acting sounds from the start and how it sounds at the end, which is huge difference. Just taking the time to learn on it, and it's why it's one of the most important things I've heard from basically every voice actor I've ever talked to is to get some lessons, some coaching, figure out what your acting is and how to really make it work for you because as June had put it when I talked to them, humans really know how to pick up on when acting is like legitimate or it's when when someone is just acting.
Yeah, I think like and that's a really good experience. Like, cause June has been an educator for so many years, and
Mm-hmm.
he's like worked in like training actors, so he can really see like the honesty in performances and things like that. And I also speak from that similar experience because when I first started out, like I went into this completely blind because like, and I've said this before on multiple different like podcasts before and interviews, but um before voiceover work, I was never a performer or an actor. I know, shocking, right? um, but like I had like outside of like all the stuff I did at school, I was very much an introvert. So being in front of a crowd on stage, it was really frightening to me, and it still kind of is in some regard. But I took I didn't so yeah, I never like performed in theater or did anything in high school. I've always admired theater and I love like musicals and stuff like that. Like I mean, people who go on my feed and they see like a lot of my posts, they're like I post about like this musical I listen to or something that I'm really into, and they'll be like, "Yeah, were you in musical theater?" I said, "No." And they're like, "What? Are you kidding me? Like you post about this, but you're not." I'm like, I can be a fan and maybe not have been involved with it. Yeah, but getting into acting later, I took any opportunity there was to learn from it. And it's funny. We were having a discussion about this in the voice acting club last night about like different methods because like obviously methods methods overall are very different because like of course like with like stage and screen acting you have Stanislavski, you have Uta Hagen, Sanford Meisner, Lee Strasberg, like all the famous acting teachers and everything who taught like the style of method acting and stuff like that. And I
Hmm.
took those classes in college, just to because I really wanted to learn the ideas. And when I first started out acting, I would always hear the idea of get into the mindset, become the character. And I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, you have to really feel like you're in the moment, like you just became the character. You have to feel it." And I was like, and so like I started like becoming so obsessed with that to the point where I started really trying to become the character in the moment. Like I kept thinking like I thought it was like this magical spotlight that you get into where you're suddenly just there and you're the character. But then later on, like after I took more coaching and everything, and I started really pushing myself out as an actor, I realized, okay, like it's not the. This is a phrase a lot of us say throughout the VA community every now and again. It ain't that deep. Like basically, the idea of the idea of it is that when you commit to a character, you just go with the flow and you take the moment. And that's what I realize, is a big thing, especially because in voiceover, especially like, and I say this as well because they do this with commercials, especially, and I'm doing commercial work primarily now. We don't get the scripts ahead of time until probably the day of the session. So we need to take everything that we've learned, and we got to like really just go in with a cold reading mindset where we can have a toolbox of emotions and ideas that we can pull from when we get that script, and we can just go with it. Because that's the one thing I think that a lot of people do need to really approach, is that having that emotional toolbox is good, because when you go into it, you have a avenue that you can pull from for every performance. And I remember in that conversation last night in voice acting club, we were talking about like the idea of methods and things like that. I'm personally not a big fan of method acting. Like I'm sure you've heard like excuse me, you've heard stories about like Jared Leto and
That was the first
Heath
example I
Ledger.
was thinking of.
Yeah. Like and Daniel Day-Lewis is another great example. And I will say, for my own personal like opinion, I think Daniel Day-Lewis, if you know who he is, you know who he is?
I'm aware of the name. I can't immediately recall what his roles were. I'm very
He's
familiar with the
he's
name
done
though.
he's done a lot. He also has won 3 Academy Awards, so
Hmm.
there you go. But he is very much a method actor who commits and really researches things for the performance. But I remember reading this story, and my friend John told me about this actually. He was doing a performance of Hamlet on stage. I
Cool.
think this is like 1988 or so, and he ended up getting so into the performance and getting so into the character that when the scene came where Hamlet saw the ghost of his father, Daniel Day-Lewis in that moment hallucinated seeing his recently deceased father on the stage, and he had a nervous breakdown.
Oh.
So yeah, so I heard that and I started thinking to myself, okay, that is not good. Like that's why like I when I look at method acting, I think that it can be very unhealthy for you mentally and physically, especially physically if you're starving yourself for a role or you're doing something like that. Like I'm really not a fan of that, because I feel like acting shouldn't be taken to so many extremes to the point where you adversely affect either your physical or mental health. And
Right.
that's why like and I think for me personally, like on my experience with voiceover, I like the spontaneity of going in and just doing it in the moment, because and just having that emotional toolbox, because I can just go in, I can switch into things, I can jump on a character, I can be angry or mad or like bawling in like one scene, and then just be fine the next. I mean, and I've taken classes about like these different ideas, and emotional honesty is definitely something that you really is really good to convey in a performance.
Hmm.
And I think it's not really big for an audition, because I think if you really want to connect with a character and maybe like come up with ideas for them, I'd recommend personally waiting when you get after you get the part and book it, because if you do all that research and stuff just for the audition, then you're going to set yourself up for major disappointment if you don't get the part. And
Hmm.
I've seen people who have I've really seen people who have come forward and they've been like I've seen people who have really just who have come forward and they've are saying like, oh, I'm gonna really get into it for this part and I'm gonna do all this really cool stuff. And I'm like, just go record the audition. You don't need to like do all this, because like, and that's not meant to be like, and that's not meant to be like condescending or anything. It's more like because I don't think you need to pull out so much of that immediately, especially if it's not certain if you're gonna get the part or not. And because like keep in mind, like casting directors, I speak from experience, they have to listen to so many, and we're really only going to listen to like 10 seconds, and if we don't hear something interesting in those 10 seconds, then we're just going to move on to the next one. Because
Hmm.
as hard as it is to say, we are very harsh in that way. I've grown to be kind of that way, because like whenever, especially with audio quality and stuff like that, like audio quality is a big must for me when I'm doing projects, because it needs to sound clean. And if I hear any trace of reverb or background noise, I'm just going to be like, nope. Like I I sound a little bit like presumptuous with that, but like that's just because I expect like quality out
Well,
of like things like that.
Stamper had brought that up when I talked to him, is because he had said before on another podcast, there's always somebody that's looking for your specific type of voice.
Hmm.
You just need to get up and go for it if you really want to. But when I talked to him, he also brought up, like it's great that you have a voice that you can use, but if you're not making the effort to put in something usable, then it's kind of
Hmm.
pointless, because it's kind of difficult to you know weed out the sound of a AC running directly behind your head while you're recording on a iPod headphone microphone.
Yeah, and even, like, some actors that have broadcast quality studios still struggle with, like, stuff like that. I'm struggling with it right now because I mean, I've got a fully treated, broadcast quality space, but I'm in the basement where the AC unit is, and, like, 2 days ago, because, like, we're getting into the summer season now,
Mm,
like, I was listening I went downstairs and my AC unit was on, and it sounded like a jet engine, so I'm just like, "Oh god, now I gotta, like, find a way to work around this." Like, because I mean, the heater unit is very quiet by comparison, so I could easily work with that, but the AC unit, no, I can't. I really gotta find a way around it, so that's gonna be really difficult.
right.
But, and especially because I live with my family, so I feel like it's gonna be really harder. But I feel like, especially because, like, I work from home now, so I feel like I can do a lot of my stuff during the day and just kinda, like, uh kind of space it out in a way. And also, if I have a really important session in the evening, I can say to my family, like, hey, I really need to go do this. Like, can we turn it off just for like an hour?
Mm.
And then we'll turn it right back on after I'm finished. Like, and I think it's a good compromise in a way. I do know that if I move at some point and I'm able to build up my space somewhere else, I'm just gonna like use that
Mm.
to as my own little thing. I'm very picky about my audio because I really, really try to make sure that it's clean. And one person that I trust with it completely is Arthur Tisserant, who is a audio engineer, demo producer, voice actor. If you don't know them, they are one of the best people ever. They're actually a moderator in the voice acting club.
I was wondering why I
Uh,
heard that name before.
yeah, they've done demo production for majority of my friends and everything. I've gone to them for my commercial reel and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So they're really, really, they are very, very, cool to work with. They're also super fun. We actually worked on something a couple days ago that'll hopefully be out
Sweet.
there soon. So
Can't wait for
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, it's one of the biggest things that I have to contend with because I live in a fairly quiet neighborhood. Like I live next door to a middle school and a high school. But usually I'm home by the time all the kids are out, so I don't have to deal with that. What I do have to
yeah,
deal with is idiots that decide to drive up and down the street right in front of my house. These are the kind of guys that have the souped up cars. So I have to hear their mufflers just screaming when they're a quarter mile down the road. Really loud motorcycles too are a problem. But the main thing that I have an issue with most of the time is when my family is in the living room watching movies on their really really good like sound system they have in there, and it's kind of difficult to you know prevent those noises from leaking into my recordings while I'm recording just relying on comforters, a mattress, and some microfiber blankets. It gets really
yeah,
difficult. So that's why I'm actually trying to build these acoustic panels. I'm only at 2 out of 16 so far. Because
yeah. Like,
the intent is to build a. I'm trying to sound isolate this little booth that I'm building as much as I can.
yeah, I use, like, mostly a blanket fort right now, like, with Vocal Booth to Go blankets and stuff. Like,
Mm,
they're a really great, like, resource for, like, acoustic blankets and stuff like that. I love their stuff. But if I could at some point, I really, really wanna build, like, an actual I mean, honestly, I would go and invest in a Studio Bricks if I could because, Studio Bricks are, like, the big thing
mm,
for, like, voiceover actors right now, but they are expensive, and I don't have that kind of money, so but I'm also kind of interested in the challenge of building my own space, because I have friends who have built their own booths. Like they could hire a carpenter and then they just come in and do it.
mm.
So that is something that I've considered, honestly. It's just a matter of figuring out a carpenter that has built this type of thing before, and then a matter of getting all the acoustics in there for it, like the Rockwell panels and foam bass traps.
Rockwell is exactly what I'm using right now for these panels,
Yeah,
actually, because I'm
that's
using. If
good.
I'm
Yeah.
sure you've seen the video on the build your own acoustic panels from the Lonely Rocker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I considered that as well, like, because I do think Rockwell panels are the most effective, and they really, really isolate the sound super good. It's just a matter of, figuring out how to do it. Also, Owens Corning is another big one,
Mm-hmm.
which Booth Junkie very much recommends that. Really, really, awesome acoustics you can use. They are a bit more expensive, and I think you can find more Rockwell at, Home Depot or Lowe's than anywhere else. I found, yeah, I get like a lot of my, I would probably get like a bunch of my rock wool panels at a Home Depot or something, and then just cover them up. It's funny. I saw a video way back. There was this like singer on YouTube. I can't remember her name, but she and her partner built this vocal booth. It was like made out of like fiber boards and had like a door and stuff. And they open it up, and the rock wool's in there, and it wasn't covered. And I'm like, no, why is the rock wool not covered? You need to cover this because like that's fiberglass. If it leaks out, it's gonna get into your throat.
I think I
Into your
know what the
bronchitis.
video is that you're talking. I may have seen it, and then I saw the next one from I think the channel's called A Day in Russia or something like that.
I don't
Um,
know. I don't think that's what it's called. I'd have to find it and send it to you after this. But but yeah, I was watching it and I'm like, the idea of the booth, like with fiberboards, kind of making it into a little space is good, especially because it has a door,
mhm.
which can help like keep things out. Like especially because I have a cat and he tends to walk in every now and again. Yeah, my cat is like always wants to come in when I'm working, and I'm like, no, I need to work. Get out of here.
I've got a couple plans of my own for these because right now I'm just trying to build the panels at all, but I'm
Right.
using because it's going to be two side by side and then two on top of each other. So basically, each wall is 2 by 2 in terms of number
Yeah.
of panels. But one of those walls is going to be 2 by 1, just two on or one on top of the other, and then the two on the side is going to be empty. Those are going to be put on the ceiling,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just put a door where that space is because I need to get in somehow. But
Yeah.
that's the
Then maybe
basics
some
first. Um,
Maybe some bass traps as well for the
yeah,
low bass frequencies. Oh, never neglect bass traps. They
no.
are ungodly essential for a space. Um, but yeah, that's my spiel on recording spaces.
One step at a time every time because you
One
don't
step
want
at a
to
time.
rush it. You never want to rush things. It can be overwhelming. With
Yep.
with this, like, I want to eventually have it so that I can mount a monitor inside of the booth whenever I set it up, so that I don't have to keep going in and out between my computer outside of the booth and into the booth again to record. I could
Yeah.
just control it from the inside because it's a dual monitor thing, but that'll come after I have it built to begin with.
Cool.
It's always a process to slowly build up to things. Like, I'm getting this built for myself to begin with, only because it's like a third, half the price of a Studio Bricks, booth. But Studio Bricks, Whisper Room, whatever it is, that kind of thing is going to be like the end goal where I know I'm actually doing better with it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but until then, really more of the investment is going to be going into, like we covered the acting coaching. With I'm trying to keep it varied because I've done lessons with Junyun before. Actually, just a couple weeks ago, got done with the whole 6 week workshop with Reed Rudy.
Nice, nice.
Amazing guy. I cannot recommend him enough because it was that taught me a lot of things when it comes to voiceover. Not the least of which, one of the things that stood out to me the most was that a lot of my own previous life experiences really fed into me, being able to understand some of the roles that were, given to us for the practice.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the lessons involved having some of the people from his agency, A3, showing up to answer some questions about agency and what they do, what the relationship is, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we did some live readings in front of them. And interestingly enough, one of the roles that was given to me for this little session was the audition sheet for, I think his name was Robbie from Gravity Falls.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, that guy's like overall personality, just from what I read of his description and the lines that were in there, felt very much like an old friend of mine that I used to hang out with, who was just total ladies guy, always trying to get laid, always trying to make himself sound so much more deep than when he was just kind of just another guy, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just like, I know this personality exactly, and it there was like, and I basically just had to redo one line, but they otherwise said it was like, you got that like right on, and like I just
Yeah.
knew I just knew the personality. That's all it came down to, because I had
Mhm.
experienced it myself before. And that's kind of one thing that I find is a great difference between method acting and emotional acting, because I think method acting has its place. Like Keanu Reeves or John Wick, he just ran himself through a battery of obstacle courses, but that's just because John Wick itself is so like physically based.
Yeah, it's a very big physical kind of thing, and I think, like, he really wanted to be more in that kind of that situation,
Mhm.
because if you kinda artificially do it, then it's gonna not really register well with the audience.
Yeah, but you
Um,
don't want to put
that's
yourself through like
yeah.
real combat situations if you want to play,
Yeah.
a soldier with PTSD or whatever it is. Just
Yeah.
ask questions, get to know some of the people, and you'll have a better idea of, what you need to
Yeah.
convey.
Or even meet somebody that has had that kind of experience, and then you can maybe draw influence from that into your performance,
Mhm.
and kinda really bring it out. Like, that's at least I haven't had to do something like that completely yet for a performance, but I'd like to at some point, so that'd be pretty cool.
I think it would be fun.
Um, yeah. Also, looking at the chat right now, there's some, people in there.
Hmm.
Cool.
I think we'll get to this question that we have in here before I get to another part that I wanted to touch on to you with was, oh man, Boba T VA or
Yeah,
I
that's
don't.
my friend, Nevin Schluter. Hey, Nevin, how you doing?
I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that username correctly. I don't know if it's
Yeah, you
Boba
got
T or
it, you
okay.
got it. You got it, don't worry.
But yeah, what is your favorite role that you've gotten to act for?
Oh my god, that's like trying to choose my favorite child. Oh my god. Um, I think the one that I think really sticks out to me the most, especially more recently, that I have a bunch that I haven't been able to announce yet because of non-disclosure agreements, but one that I think has been very, very noteworthy to me was this one that I did last year, a little game called War Islands by a thing called Baduba Version. I play a character named Jonathan, and that was a really big game because, like, it was done in Unreal Engine 4 and it had really beautiful cinematic cutscenes, which
Hmm.
I've never had that. I've always wanted to do a game that had that kind of visual style, so getting to do it was a really big thing for me. There's a funny story though about the audition, because when I got so I saw the audition on Twitter. It was on It's Studio Eve, and I looked at the character and I thought, okay, like, he's 19, he's a uh, like a high school student, da da da. Like, speaks with a posh English accent. I was like, oh boy, because at the time I had no real experience doing accents. Um, so I basically decided to. So I hit up one of my friends. His name is Min Tan. He's a English actor. Um, that I've known probably since the beginning. We both started around the same time, and I asked him for advice on the dialects. So when we were, so I he gave me some little tips about the how to do the syllables and things like that, especially um like when one with the posh accent, for example, like there are phrases that you say like in the past a daft dance with a crafty laugh was a lasting drama, or the appallingly naughty daughter was caught by the law. Little things like that, of course. And then I went in. It's hard for me to get out of the accent after I do it. Um, I'll just do the rest of the interview like this. How's that? I'm kidding. So I went in and I did the audition, and I had low expectations. I didn't think I was gonna get it, and then I got contacted 3 weeks later, and I'm told by the casting director, "You got the part," and I'm like, "Oh shit!" Like, now I gotta learn this accent. So I spent like a week just looking up the phrases and practicing all the pronunciations and things like that, and just learning as best I can, and then we got to the recording process, and we basically decided to uh I basically we decided to just and then I went in and I just did the recordings, and it came out very well. And I think with time I didn't have to really worry as much about the accent because I kind of grew more comfortable with it, and I've gotten to use it now for other projects. But yeah, Jonathan is definitely one of the roles that has definitely been the most noteworthy to me.
Hmm.
Um, I definitely recommend going and playing War Islands. It's a really fun, like, open world sandbox type game. And if you want to hear me talking with a British accent, then there you go.
I'm assuming that's available on Steam, like so many games are.
hmm
Cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. Um, I guess you've brought up casting. The casting directors getting back to you 3 weeks later, and that's gonna get into the other part that I wanted to touch onto you with was
Okay.
you mentioned that you do casting direction now.
Uh-huh.
In addition to your voiceover work, you said that one of them was, as many people know, Wild Card, and the other one you said I think was Stygius. What was it?
Stygia.
Stygia. Thank you. Um, I wanted to ask you because there's like it's kind of a two-parter thing to this. But the
Okay.
first was on that 3 week period part. What is it in your experience so far as a casting director that makes it such a long time between the audition submission deadline and the final contact of whoever it is for whatever role?
Um, oh goodness. That's really hard. I think could you actually repeat that again? I kind of need to process it for a sec.
Just kind of like what is it that creates a multi-week gap between the audition deadline and final contact for the role?
So, a lot of times what it is just going through every single file that's been delivered, and then you mark out the ones that don't work. You put it out the list that really stands out to you, the actors that really, really capture it in your personal opinion, and then you send it over to the and sometimes this can take like maybe 3 or 4 days to get done depending upon the amount of characters. Um so and then I send it over to the creator and they listen through the files and then you think, okay, this one. And then sometimes they'll have a decision right away for like the characters, but sometimes they may have a different viewpoint on which would be the best character. That maybe there could be three people in line that really do it well, and it makes it hard to decide. So then they do a short list, and then they take that short list and they send it off to the actors to do kind of like a final audition of sorts. And then they do it, they send it in, and then we listen to it, and then from there it's just creator makes final decisions, and that can take a while because one, because of the amount of emails, and two, because of situations like that where you got to do a short list and everything, because you're never certain completely what actors like will be doing, and like if they can get on the auditions immediately, because some can't and others are very quick to jump on it as quickly as others. Albeit I do understand like it can be harder for some actors to not really make the deadline because of commitments or other things. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's a big situation where it happens. And with Wildcard, that was a big situation when we were doing a very recent round where we had to get people on a short list because God, there were so many good ones too, and it was crazy.
Sorry, choked on my coffee for a second. um, so there's definitely a lot of process because depending on how many, you said it depends on how many characters you get, but I would assume this
Uh-huh.
also comes with how many auditions you get for each character. And I imagine there's, at least for Wildcard, there was a lot.
Yeah, like probably at least 700, between 700 and 800 emails
Jesus.
in total. So round that out, and you get like probably I can't even count how many files there were. There were probably like at least 3,000.
Damn.
Oh gosh.
That is a lot. And you have to, I would imagine it takes like a minute at least for each file.
Probably less than that, depending on how many lines there are. Some people like have more monologues, but some people have more of a monologue approach to it. Others are more like easier to get done. So sometimes the file can be like 30 seconds at the most. Depends also on how many takes the actor does, because will do one take. The max, in my personal opinion, is two, because I think that there's only you might have two different interpretations of the character. I have seen people that do three takes if they have a certain idea for the character. Oh my god. When I started out, I was so perfectionist, and I remember I used to record 6 takes for an audition.
Oh.
Yeah, I was crazy, and I remember I did a workshop once, and we were talking about it, and then the head was just like, "Now, Patrick, you don't need to do 6 takes per audition." And I'm like, "Am I being scolded?" And I'm just like, "Yeah." it was it was funny. But yeah, it was great. But yeah, that's really kind of what it is when it comes to that's really what it is when it comes to that's honestly really what it comes down to when you get into when you do it, you know, you just it's just a big process and it's a lot of work and it's a big collaborative process between you and the creator. So you have to really work super hard with that.
You, the creator, the people that you decide to put on that short list, and then the final communications on that, and there's just it's because having a production crew like that. There's quite a few people that have to work on it. Casting director, depending on what kind of show it is, animation, sound designers, and then of course all the cast. There's so much that goes into it that it can, yeah, like we said, has been took a couple of years to finally develop into the pilot.
Yep.
And now we have Hell of a Boss, which is, it's looking at the credits, it's got a full freaking crew for
Full
animation on it.
freaking crew, and it's also just had its fifth episode released yesterday,
Yeah.
which I always think about that, and I think like, gosh, how do they get these episodes out so fast? But I think it's also because like Hell of a Boss is more intended to be just a web series,
Mm-hmm.
whereas Has Been Hotel is really trying to get itself marketed to a network. I think it just got marketed to a network recently.
A24,
So
yeah.
yeah, A24. So I'm really excited to see where it goes from there, and I'm hoping, in my opinion, that if it is like put out there and it gets picked up, well, now that it's picked up, I'm hoping that the indie cast, like of Elsie Lovelock, Michael Kovac, and everybody, I'm really hoping they can stay on board for it because
I hope so too.
they made those characters.
Yeah. But that's kind of the big difference between the two is the Helpful Bot, or sorry, the Hasbin pilot was like somewhere around 30 minutes total runtime,
Hmm.
whereas each of the Hell of a Boss episodes is somewhere between like 5 to 10 minutes long each.
Yeah,
But
they're fairly short.
it also has like 2 dozen animators on it at any time. So that's
Yeah.
just the animation team too. So some projects can take a little bit longer to work with. Others, just kind of depends on the medium. Um, but there's always like other things that tend to happen behind the scenes. Like, I remember when the Lackadaisy crew was on, Fable said that if they need to do what was it pickups for basically all of the lines, something has gone horribly wrong. um, but what I'm assuming is that pickups means like a quick like retake or a new line or something like that, depending on what the situation is. Um, but that's kind of like a more of a simple thing that is probably more likely to happen. But for you, you're a casting director on Wildcard. I think was it you that also decided to step back from an actual role in the show?
That's correct.
Yes.
I initially was cast for a character, Astra Kasai, but come February, Alex and I were having discussions about it, and we agreed for the sake of representation that it was good for me to step down from Asher. And for a long time, I had kind of been feeling that guilt because for me, I'm very big on representation in media, especially with voiceover.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I remember, especially when the Black Lives Matter movement started, because I've been cast for Asher for a year at that point, I felt really bad because I felt like I really was taking a role away and it didn't feel right to me, and I kept trying to put it off in my head and everything, but it kept like coming back. And then when Alex and I sat down to discuss it, I kind of thought this is really the right thing to do. So, and then when I did it and I put it out on Twitter that I was going to be stepping down, there was a lot of support. And I remember one person, Kieran Strange, they described me as brave for taking a decision like that because it takes a lot of um, respect and thoughtfulness to be able to step down for a role for the sake of that. And we got two wonderful performers now who are doing them. Caleb Yen and Nick Chang. They both are performing as Asher. Like Caleb's doing the speaking voice and Nick's doing the singing voice.
Hmm.
That's really gonna be cool.
It's always like for me, originally it was something of a like a conflicted thing for me because on one hand, yeah, do very much favor representation in various roles. Like it when the Black Lives Matter movement started, becoming a thing. At least last year,
Mhm.
um, it I noticed there was just like explosion of people asking for, BIPOC roles. I never actually figured out what BIPOC actually means.
BIPOC stands for, I think it stands for I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head, it's been a long time. Trying to think of it right now. It means, basically, it means Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Like indigenous and people. Okay, that makes sense. That makes a little more sense. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of roles asking for that nowadays. Uh, I think I've also seen a lot of roles calling specifically for non-binary, and some even asking specifically for, I think, trans people as well.
Yeah,
So,
transgender, non-binary people, I think, like, that's really and I think, like, I think it really brings a level of understanding to the
mhm,
role, especially if you're somebody that grew up and you struggle with gender dysphoria and stuff like that, you can
mhm,
really bring that same experience to the role and create an honest and truthful performance, and I think, like, that's why I'm very excited when with a lot of transgender actors getting these really big opportunities recently
mhm,
because I have a lot of transgender friends out there who are performers and seeing them get these wonderful opportunities just makes me so excited because I'm like, yes, they did it. It's so cool. So I really like that,
yeah,
and
because
so it's a really nice thing to see.
yeah, and well, that's kind of what it is. Is like I said, it on the one hand, I'm very supportive of the idea of the more representation thing. But originally, that conflicted with one of the first things I had learned about voiceover is that you can voice anyone if you knew how to control your range and all that stuff. But the more I thought about it, it came down to you can have the range to cover many different types of characters. But then as I was going through the lessons with Reed Rudy, I started to understand a little bit better um, the the emotional, the conveying the emotion and the character and all that really stands out when you have a better understanding of the character in
Hmm.
whatever particular situations it is. And in a lot of these cases, when you have a character that's trans or a character that is black or Asian or whatever the case is, it probably does actually help to have somebody, voicing the character that has already lived those experiences, being trans, being, non-binary, being black, Asian,
Hmm.
Hispanic, whatever the case is. Um, so for me, it's like, you know, if it I guess if they're really short-handed or nobody, I can't even really justify that part. But it's like if there's just not really a whole lot of options because it's a really small project, I guess. But if you have the options, I would if I were a casting director, I would want a trans actor to play a trans character because I would expect them to already understand how to convey the character.
Yeah, and I think of it like in a different sense, like not just in my experience stepping down from Asher, but I also think of it like with Mike Henry, who was one of the many voices on Family Guy.
Hmm.
He stepped down from Cleveland very
I heard about
recently, and
this.
yeah, and I have great respect for Mike Henry now because of that. Like, I'm not a huge Family Guy fan, but I do respect him for making that decision to step down because it obviously takes a lot of bravery to do that. But I also think that it's hard to do that because some people don't really understand the circumstances of it's not really the best idea to continue with these kind of roles um, if you're a Caucasian actor, because it's like it's a complex thing, and I think that really my biggest opinion is just if you, for the sake of representation, I think that this is like what needs to be done, and
Hmm.
that's why I will always stand by my decision for what I did, and if it ever happens again, and if I ever had to do it again, I would
Hmm.
because it's the right thing to do.
Of course, because it's not always easy to just Okay, sorry, I almost went in the wrong direction with my own question, my own response there. Um, Whenever we're confronted with an idea that we not even made a mistake so much as just this just doesn't feel right. We don't really want to confront that feeling. Like we are so afraid of not even being wrong, just kind of looking like we made a wrong choice or something like that.
Hmm.
But that's where you mentioned that people had called you really brave before, but that's what that says to me is not so much that um, yeah, that you just decided to man up and face the situation. It's that it goes back to one of those old sayings: bravery is acting in the face of danger in spite of it, not
Right.
without fear. For you, it was like I would assume, or actually, you even said yourself that you felt some level of guilt for it, but
It
um,
yeah, it progressed, honestly, like, for a
yeah,
little while, because I remember I started really thinking about it in depth probably when we were doing the first round, because that was when the movement had started and there was a big push for it, and I started thinking and thinking and thinking about it more and more, and I started thinking to myself, like, "Is this right? Like, should I be doing this?"
mm,
And, I kept trying to put it off in my head, because it was well, maybe because, like, I didn't wanna admit it to myself, but also because, I kinda but I kept feeling this guilt over the whole thing because I felt like it was just not right to do it.
right. And you still acted on that in spite of that fear, in spite of that fear, in spite of the guilt. You still took the action on it, which is the brave part in my eyes, in that you decided to
Yeah.
just admit to it, which so many people have an issue doing nowadays.
Yeah. Something that I have noticed, it's funny talking about bravery. I was watching this video a couple days ago. I'm a big fan of Neil Gaiman's Coraline. Big
Hmm.
fan of the movie and the book. And there was a little part in the book that never made it into the film where Coraline, the main character, goes into this backstory about how her father took her outside one day and they nearly came across a wasp nest,
Ooh,
and he told her to run ahead so that he could stay back so that way she didn't get hurt by the wasps and everything. And then later he had to go back for his glasses, and he said, like, it wasn't brave because I had to do it, like, I was brave because I was scared.
right.
And I think that's the big thing because people tend to think with bravery it's the fact that you're not scared or
Mm,
you're not, like, afraid, but no, in my opinion, only fools are fearless.
hmm.
I think that honestly, you need to feel some kind of level of fear or something like that because comes from bravery comes from the idea of facing your fear and being able to stand up to it and confront it.
Mm,
And you'll always be scared with certain situations. I know for me, I get really startled easily, but I think that being brave is it's a big thing that comes from action and speaks more about you as a whole than um what you tout out. Like if you're saying like, "Oh, I'm not scared of anything," like I I'd rather see somebody who demonstrates a level of showing that emotion of fear but being willing to keep going forward than somebody who just says like that they're brave and doesn't fear anything.
right. Yeah, it's part of why I usually subscribe to the idea of stoicism, which is, if I'm remembering this correctly, um, it's not a lack of emotion. It's
Hmm.
not letting the emotions be the driving force behind your actions and your decisions. You want things to you want things to end with a good resolution, not just something that satisfies people. And in this case, it would have been more, there's other people who could benefit from this opportunity, especially when it comes to representing people. And
Yeah.
for like, I'm not sure if it was so much an emotionally driven decision for you, but there was definitely a little bit of logic in there in that there's this thing going on now where we want to have people give more representation, or sorry, we want to give more people representation, and this is at least one more opportunity for them to do that. It
Yeah.
just kind of makes sense.
It does, and I think that it's a big thing that we should really be respectful about this day and age. And I think, and I'm hoping that it'll lead to a lot more a bigger push for representation in bigger media, not just in alongside other forms of anime and animation and things like that, and video games. Because I have watched I mean, this is just an indie sphere, but I do hold the hope that there will be a bigger push in professional animation, anime, and video games for actors,
Mhm.
by POC actors, and who can get bigger opportunities that way. I think it'll be a really great opportunity for them to go forward and be able to express their abilities through that.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to do that, and I think like knowing now stepping down from that role really does give me the biggest confidence knowing that we're going to go forward now with a more a more bigger push for this kind of thing and a bigger more hope for a diverse industry. So I'm really excited for that.
It sounds like the whole ordeal was kind of a big learning experience for you, like so many other things were
Yeah,
before. Yeah, this one was
it
just a
was.
really huge one.
It was like it was a big learning experience because it really woke me up to what I needed to do, and I think it gave me more insight as a casting director to focus on these things, like when I'm casting, especially if we have BIPOC characters, and things like that. I think it'll really give a big opportunity in that regard.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I think it'll be great.
So I guess into more learning experiences, we do have another question from our audience. Tyoth, uh, Tyothi? I'm sorry if I'm
Seem
butchering
like
the pronunciation.
Tyothi.
Tyothi? I have no clue. So apologies if I'm butchering that pronunciation, but
Mhm.
oh no, sorry, boba tea again. Sorry.
Okay.
Damn, my ability to pay attention is just gone nowadays. They do ask what makes a great audition. Um,
Okay.
speaking to
All right.
learning experiences.
I think what makes a really great audition is confidence, commitment, and the ability to really show different ideas if you're in your projects. I feel like when you're given a script, you might the creator either may have an idea of what the character is personality wise, and an idea for the voice that they want. But that is also liable to change, especially when you hear an audition that really can capture something and change it, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and I think that if you can bring something of your own to it and maybe change it up a little bit and bring something truthful and honest to it, you have an ability that you can convey that'll really can shock the casting director or the creator and show them that there is something that they could bring into it. I also think on the technical side, obviously, audio quality is a big thing to really keep in mind, like really good, crisp audio. Um, Making sure your levels are set right, making sure they don't peak, things like that. That's a big thing that we've all kind of learned. We learned from day one is to make sure that our audio doesn't peak. I've I've had moments where I've lost some good takes because I didn't set my levels right. I still occasionally get that, so guilty.
It's part of why I want to try to eventually reach the point where I can set up a monitor and all that in the booth that I'm building.
Mhm,
Because where I have my audio interface right now is I've got a corner of my room where there's the two-door sliding door closet thing.
mhm.
But on the wall adjacent to that is my bookshelf. And what I decided to do, my bed, the headboard is up against the bookshelf. So what I do is I throw the mattress up against the empty, space there, and I use everything between the headboard, the closet door, and the bookshelf as the actual recording space. Um, and for me, it's the where the audio interface is actually beneath the bed, facing the inside of that space.
Mhm.
And it's always a pain because I have to get down to my knee and tweak at the knob down there instead of just like I could be standing when I'm recording these, but it's not level with my waist. That has to take a lot more finagling to put it in the right position because I don't have a cable long enough for my computer to get into the closet.
Yeah, yeah.
So having a booth that I can have a little shelf that I can prop up or something like that I can set the audio interface on, that would be the big benefit for me of having the booth.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think like that would be that's the best thing about having a recording space is that you have more of that control and also you can really have the flexibility with it. I'm lucky with mine that I've managed to make it kind of flexible that I can move around freely.
Mm,
I record in much more of an open space because I'm tall and I like to like have more space for my arms to kind of move around and stuff like
yeah.
that. Though I don't know, I'd have to discuss it if I hire a carpenter, how I want to kind of have it good to go and everything. Honestly, I might have to really talk to somebody about like the idea of like maybe a double walled one so it'll get rid of like all that AC noise and stuff. Like really isolate it because like I said, I've talking about studio bricks. I mean, those are really good and all, but yeah, they're expensive, and I don't have money. They're not good. It's not good. I don't have money.
I remember looking into it once, and I think what they did was I'm trying to remember. I think they had like a deposit thing, something like that, for them to start building it. And then I think they deliver it once it's all paid off, but I don't remember exactly how that worked. But I remember seeing something about a deposit at the start.
Hmm.
If I knew my situation a little bit better or knew it was a little more stable, yeah, because I'm still trying to pay off my damn cards.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
yeah, finances is always fun. Um, but once I know I'm stable on that end, I may make that investment. But like I said, the first thing I'm going to be investing in is more time learning from active professionals, trying to really hone my own acting skills, figure out my range, all that fun stuff. Because in the end, a good sound space, or yeah, a good recording space isn't the only thing you need. You still need to know how to convey the characters, have that confidence and everything, know how to bring out those new ideas, like you had said before.
Yeah.
Because if I don't know how to do that, I'm not likely to get very many roles.
Yeah, I think like honestly, like that's why coaching is a big uh but yeah, it's really whew, but yeah, like I definitely can see like that it's harder like with that's why I think coaching is very invaluable, and I think anybody should go and do it of some kind, or even like just go and find opportunities outwardly, like doing like some community theater, doing some local acting classes or improv groups or things like that. Like I took when I didn't have the money to do really big lessons or things like that, I would do any kind of like thing at college, and I was lucky because I had a avenue of being in a performing arts division, so I had that ability to go out and do it. So I feel like that's the benefit of it overall is being able to just look for any opportunity there is to learn and maybe build up on things, and also find people that can maybe give you some good advice.
Mm.
That's why I really recommend the voice acting club, because they give very really in-depth feedback. They give you some really nice things to work off of. They're really really lovely people. I think they're some of the best people I've gotten to be in good company with. Definitely recommend joining their server if you haven't yet.
Oh yeah, I've had talks with quite a few people in there who have taught me quite a lot. Like one person that I give a lot of respect to is actually Audio Lich. In the server, I think they're an audio engineer. I can't remember
Yeah,
specifically, yeah. But they answered a lot of questions for me and actually gave me a lot of really good feedback. And it's really appreciated. And one thing I
mhm,
came to realize after joining is there are so many people that are willing to talk with you, give you feedback, help you out, with the right information. And for me, that's kind of the big part is having that external feedback, because if you're listening to yourself and you think, I could do better on this take, that's one thing, but that'll only get you so far, because you'll eventually start to get to that point of, yeah, this sounds good, even though someone else may listen to it and think, this could go another direction.
mhm.
So having that is always a good thing, and there's plenty of people in the voice acting club to help out with it. There's also information that they can give you. Like one of the things that Audio Lich had told me of, right at
Mhm.
the start, was that a good acceptance rate of auditions that paid professionals have as their rate, somewhere in the neck of the woods of like 5 to 10%.
Yeah, and I've had to kind of like pull a lot of that rates and everything out too, especially like because I mean like I said, I'm doing like more commercials now, so I have to really keep along with the rates, especially because I mean, indie projects is one thing, and they
Mhm.
have their own set rates for that because indie creators have more of a different budget that they work on. But with commercials, like it's a lot more um complex than that. So I feel like it's a really good thing. I always recommend the GVAA guide because that's a really nice place to um to look forward with because they really like will give you some good stuff. I just actually got an e-learning gig that I had to calculate the rates for, so that was a really helpful guide to look forward to. I might have to use it again if I ever get like some more commercials because like I do most of my stuff through voices.com and things like that, so I may have to get like a little vouchers because like come tax season, depending on how much I make, like it can be a little much. Yeah. Oh, the humanity of taxes.
I know. I guess I made a lot more in 2020 than I did in 2019 because I am not getting as much of my tax returns this year as I did last year, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of painful. But I'm trying to make the best I can with it because at least my job that I have is paying somewhat decently. Um, but that's living with people, and I'm trying to get my own place, but I'm trying to calculate the risk on that one. Is like, am I gonna be paying too
Yeah.
much just to live? Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I gotta figure that out myself too. Moving.
yeah, but yeah, it's always good to have different sources of feedback, like learning from Jun Yoon as a complete beginner actor. There's a lot of really valuable information to get from that, and then learning from Reed Rudy. There was a lot more information to get out of that as well. Although I do still want to continue learning a little bit with Jun Yoon, because he's a little bit more, I guess, accessible is the word. Um, Maybe a little bit more available, I would say, because
Mhm.
Reed Rudy, really cool guy. Like I say, I can't recommend his classes enough. Um, but he's also a fairly active voiceover artist. He's doing commercials. He actually does things for the NFL in voiceover,
Mhm.
which I would imagine keeps him very busy when the season starts up again.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be very it definitely does sound like there'd be a lot of work that they have to keep up with, especially because like if you have to do um like seasons with different like things overall, it would definitely make sense.
Yeah. Um,
Oh gosh.
so his availability, I think, might be a little more limited. Although I know he does also do monthly workouts, which I intend to get into first chance I get. I just got again get my financial situation stabilized. But it's almost taken care of. I'm like a few $100s off from getting it finished off. Um, yeah, but with June, yeah, his lessons are a little more flexible because he has them scheduled like Monday through Saturday, if I remember correctly.
Uh-huh.
And I think he cut the last lesson times a little bit short because he wants to spend a little more time with his family, which I totally understand. Um, but he is fantastic to work with. Really cool guy, and um, if you're a complete beginner voice actor, he'll even tag you in casting calls that he sees that he thinks your voice would actually be a good fit for, depending on the character. So I would say he's an incredibly good person to start with. Um, but in terms of if people are looking to be voice actors themselves, one of the things that I learned is if you're going to be getting coaching or lessons from anybody like that, make sure they're still active in
Mhm.
in that career because one of the things they pointed out is when is the last time they actually booked a gig, and if they haven't, why haven't they?
Right. Like and that's another thing I think I always like tell new talent is to not worry about like if you don't book for a little while. I mean, cuz even the most seasoned professionals out there, they will have a month or so where they don't work.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we got to keep that in mind because like everybody's always saying like oh these pros are booking everything like yay like and but you gotta keep in mind, like they might have not even had work right now for some months, and that was just something they did maybe 6 or 7 months ago.
Yeah,
So
well,
so you never know.
a few months is one thing, but I think because this was one of the agents, that I mentioned before. This is one thing they had mentioned is like, maybe a few months is not really so much an issue, but if we're talking like on the scale of years, different story.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah,
Crazy.
dry spells can definitely happen. Like for me, I think I've seen like a full month go between two roles that I managed to get, and right now I'm going on like 2 or 3 weeks of not having
Mhm.
anything sent in because I've been working on these acoustic panels. Um,
Yeah, I've recently kind of got back into the groove because I went through I wouldn't say a slump in February or March, but I was working and I was doing stuff, but like mentally, my mind was just like not really
oof,
in the greatest place. Yeah. Like
yeah.
which is so I needed to like really kind of take time off to just kind of rest and work on that. But now I feel like I've gone forward with new confidence, new way of doing things. So I'm really, really excited to get back to work on that because it really gives you a good sense of um I have a new sense of optimism now when I go forward, which I think has been most of my driving force with in doing VO. Some people say that like being a little too optimistic can be a little bit of a curse, but also I see it as like my biggest asset, because eh, I think your people are likely to feel more comfortable and happy around somebody who is an optimist as opposed to like someone who's maybe more cynical. I can be not to say that I don't have moments where I'm cynical. Like I can be very very cynical sometimes. uh, as we said before we started this interview, like I swear like a sailor offside outside Twitter. So, um, but it's cool. It's very cool.
Yeah,
Um,
I do find there's a difference between being, optimistic and having like unreal expectations. Because like if you're setting really high expectations for yourself, that's more likely to make you more disappointed. Yeah, because you're just kind of like expecting things to not really turn out how reality may end up having it go. But if you're optimistic, you're just kind of you're going in thinking, okay, this is gonna be fun. At least the process of trying out for it will be fun. I may not hear back from it, but I know I made my effort, and I'll fire and forget is one term I hear often in VO. Just send an audition,
uh-huh.
forget about it until you may hear back from it. But a lot of
Hmm.
that is just like looking forward to the process and looking forward to what roles you might get because you never know, and it's always. I think it's actually more fun to have that surprise of, oh, I actually got that role.
Yeah. I always get a surprise like that whenever I get an email in my inbox that says, "Hey, you just booked this cool new role." And I'm like, "Ooh, nice." Like it's fun because you get to go forward and then you're like, "Yeah, I got the role." Like it's funny, I just announced a role recently for a little game called which actually June and I are in as a matter of fact called The In Between.
Mm.
I got the email for that like in my inbox like one morning I was getting up and getting ready to go to get to work and then suddenly I just woke up, I like pulled up my email because you always gotta like whenever you're starting off the day like with voiceover you gotta like look through your emails, see okay what do I gotta do this morning and and I see the email and there it says, "Hey Patrick, you've been cast for this character." I'm like, "Oh sick." And then I go in talk to the director and I find out June's gonna be in there. I'm like, yes, like because I've known June for a long time but we've never worked on a project together, so that was very exciting to be able um to work with him on that. So that was really cool. Really, really nice.
Yeah, June is such a wonderful personality to
He
just to get to
is.
talk with. Um,
He
I,
really
I
is.
remember because I live in California myself. I'm in the Central Valley. I'm like 6 8 hours
Mhm.
away from him because California is a surprisingly big state.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember he posted on Twitter a couple days ago that he just got his second vaccine shot, and
Yeah, like
I'm still like a week and a half away from my second shot. But I remember when he posted that, I'm like, when I get my second shot, I am going to make it a point to work out a time for me to drive down there, and we will both go to some kind of like Whatever restaurant you really enjoy, please introduce me to it.
Yeah, like I remember somebody talking about like if like things do work out overall after COVID, we can all like have like sort of a barbecue and everything together. Because I mean,
Mhm.
I have been in consideration to go to Los Angeles at some point or in the California area. It's been something I've been thinking about, but I'm still trying to figure out what would be the biggest choice for me.
Mhm.
Because there's so different avenues of VO that I want to do, but I'm not certain what would be the right place, so I really am hoping that there'll be um I'm hoping like with when the pandemic kind of starts to go down and things kind of really come out more, we can all kind of like just huddle together and get something and hopefully be able to move safely there, but we'll have to see because
Hopefully.
got to
Yeah.
save up money too because LA is really expensive.
Oh yeah, expensive, and with the current pandemic thing, LA is actually one of the hot spots for the diseases. So that's one thing
Yeah,
I've always been kind of
and New
concerned about.
York.
Oh yeah,
And New York too. Like I have friends who originally were gonna I have a lot of theater major friends who were getting ready to go to New York and they were just like, "No, we can't go to New York because the pandemic is spiked out there."
yeah.
Like it's great.
I have faith that LA and New York will eventually be able to get it under control. It's just how densely populated those cities are. It's
Yeah.
kind of tough. It's like when it all started happening, I was actually just doing a little bit of research on some of the most populated nations, and China, was actually not the most densely populated nation. It's got the most amount of people, but it's such a large mass that it actually has a lower population density than one other nation, and that nation is India.
Yeah.
And India is experiencing a huge surge right now. Um, and I expect that
Jeez.
because they're close to as many people as China, but
Mhm.
much smaller nation, so a lot more people packed together. So I was like, when it hits them, it's gonna hit them hard. But yeah, I'm hoping they get to recover from it soon. But the same kind of a principle I thought applies to both New York and LA. But I do think with the way
Mhm.
things are going right now, those cities may actually be able to get it under control again. Then we can go back to the only thing we need to worry
Mhm.
about is, can I afford to live there?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, not that I plan to live in LA because I have been there once before for a Magic the Gathering Grand Prix tournament. Um, and that was there was a complete like night and day difference on either side of, I think it was the 405, I think is the highway through LA, and
Mhm.
it was the overpass by the Staples Center, and I saw complete night and day, like gleaming, shining, windows and bright buildings and all that, total, like typical LA, vision
Yeah.
that you see. On the other side, lower middle class, type of like market neighborhoods and all that. Um, which there was a couple of spots, and I'm like, somebody just had a little too much fun with alcohol here by this mailbox.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, that was an interesting one that kind of like skewed my vision of LA. But talking with Fable, the director for Lackadaisy, they live in the LA area, and they tell me it's like it's really not all that bad. Some places are
It's
gonna be
just
a
it's
little,
just a
yeah.
matter of it's just a matter of also getting a decent day job when you start off because you never know what's going to be you never know completely what's going to be expected of it
Hmm.
because also people in the Los Angeles industry, they had to really work themselves to the bone to get where they are, especially to pay off their rent because like we said, it's very expensive there.
Yeah.
And I know yeah, and I know friends who have or are living there right now who are super super uh who are really working their asses off to make ends meet. In fact, I have a friend of mine from college. She's living there right now. She was a video editor, but now she's working at a research facility for COVID, which has been
Damn.
kind of yeah, it's been kind of hard, but it's makes good time living. And she also saved up about, I think, $10,000 before she moved out there just for the 6 months rent because at very least you're gonna need at least 6 months worth of rent if you're gonna live out there.
Right.
Um, I think the main cost for 6 months would probably be at least like $9,000. Um, yeah, I know. It's crazy because everybody like goes into it and they're thinking like I'm gonna become an actor in Hollywood and everything, and then suddenly it's like, no, you're not.
It's
Like,
very tough to make it in the LA area itself, and that's one of the nice
yeah,
things that that was brought up when I talked to Stamper is that um, you don't have to live in LA to find some kind of like not really stability with voiceover, but some level of success with it. You can start booking gigs and not live in LA. Like Michael Kovac himself is a very good example. He was living in I think it was Ohio when he started and got the
yeah.
role.
And
He
now
was
his and now
yeah
his he and his girlfriend moved out there recently.
yeah he
It's funny,
they moved like an hour away from where I live.
yeah. And Michael and I've it's funny. Michael and I have actually talked about it because we're in a game actually that we've been working on for about a year, and we've talked a little bit about Los Angeles and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, I have no doubt in my mind, like with where he is right now, he's gonna make it really, really successful out there because Michael is one of the best actors I've ever had the honor of working with and seeing. He's just so. I mean,
Hmm.
nobody. I'll say this right now. Nobody can play Angel Dust better than Michael Kovac. He is so good.
He is. I think I think it's his own personal energy that gives him the ability to do that. He's kind of like I think the closest celebrity I can equate him to is kind of like a much younger Jim Carrey, because Jim has just so much energy that he can like when he was playing the Grinch, the suit that he was having to act in, it
It's very
looked like it was
constricting.
very restrictive, but Jim just had such an abundance of energy. He was able to just make it work right through all of those
He really could work
circumstances.
with it to show how expressive he could be and everything.
Hmm.
And I think he said that he had to like get like some kind of like meditation to like get it, and then like he would like be in a very like relaxed state of mind and everything. And then like some people would come and tap in and be like, "Huh? What?" Like he was like he was so into it. I mean, I've heard conflicting things because I remember also hearing that like when he was on set he was violent. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like Jim Carrey. Come on.
I can believe he's eccentric, not violent.
Yeah, I could never think of him as being violent. He's just he's Jim Carrey. Come on. But it's funny. Like Michael is actually one of the reasons I started becoming very energetic because the people who hear a lot of my work, they tend to associate me with being like a super high energy, like hyperactive kind of like actor. And I think a lot of that was because when I started off, I didn't want to be a one note actor and just like not have any sense of realism to it. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to be super energetic and I can do that. And so whenever I go into auditions, people will be like, oh my God, like how does this guy ever get tired? Like what? Actually, no, no. One of my friends, Jacob, he was doing he was doing a thing for the Schmuck Squad, which is a bridging group, and they were doing some of the stuff there. Um, and essentially, he was doing this one session, and we had been talking a little bit, and then he said to me, like, because the character in it was High Bridge is super high energy, and he said to me, how does Pat do this? Like, because he would always like, we would always like do stuff together. And he was always like, dude, why are you so energetic? And I'd be like, I don't know. I just am. Um, like, it's funny, like speaking to you right now, I'm kind of more like lax and everything, but like when I'm on the mic, I turn into like, I just like, I'll get up and do the chicken dance if I have to. I'm like, I really just go into it. But yeah, Michael was a big influence on that, and I think I give him a lot of credit for that as well. And getting to act alongside him too, he just really you can build up a really good chemistry with him when you work
Yeah.
with him.
He was
It's really really cool.
watching him do a lot of his a lot of the podcast appearances he's done on other shows. I started to realize just how like open and just kind of like
Mhm.
silly a lot of voice actors are willing to be just for the sake of entertaining the people that are listening or watching or whatever the case. And I'm sitting here for the longest time because I'm 29 right now, and for the longest time I've always been afraid of looking like that absolute goofball that just like people look at me all weird, sometimes laugh just because of how silly I'm being.
Yeah.
So I've always been kind of averse to that, but then I start to see the kind of dynamic that voice actors actually have with each other, because I hadn't taken a look into the realm of voice actors like for real until I got my start there, until I decided to start doing this late last year. And
Mhm.
I started to see all the dynamics going on, especially between Michael and Ed Bosco, among various others. Another good example is, I think it was Griffin Puadu and Jonah Scott,
Mhm.
and Ben Diskin. They all have such a fun dynamic with each other. And I start to realize that this is like really freaking fun. There's a lot of laughs going on. Everybody's having a good time. These are the kind of relationships I'm, starting to, kind of crave with other people. And it's not so much that I, want to limit it to voice actors specifically. I, try to vary my time between various other communities, like the Lackadaisy community has been. There's other ones for, like the Russian Badger on YouTube. I'm, huge fan of
Mhm.
him and some of the people in his crew. Um, there's a lot of people that I enjoy, just kind of hanging around from these communities,
Mhm.
and just kind of like I find myself like having just a little bit more fun when I start to like really express that energy, that willingness to be kind of silly. And for me, I think it'll actually help me out because I, GM some D&D games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, I'm actually playing D&D right now. Me and my friend Alex Lamoureux, he is, I kept begging him to get me into D&D because I've always been interested in it, and I never was able to explore it completely because when I was in school, like, I went to college and, like, um, oh my god, like, I went to college for it, and I never really had a I never really had a avenue that I could work with
Mm.
because unfortunately, like, because of like my because of basically my basically because of everything that I had um because of like the okay, I'm losing my memory right now. Okay, I remember. All right. My brain just farted for a second. Basically, we did Shadowrun my freshman year, and
Ooh.
I had no experience with D&D before that, and doing that was so complex, and our dungeon master was kind of didn't know what the hell he was doing, so
Oh.
it kind of ruined the game for me. So
Right.
I kind of like said to myself, "Yeah, I don't think I like D&D." But then Alex, my friend Alex Lamoureux, he helped me to get back into it with some friends, and we actually are having a session tonight. Funny enough,
Mhm.
and I'm excited because I really like D&D. Um, so I feel like it'll really give me a uh, man, I think it'll really give me a good avenue on acting and things like that. Um, I really think I've had a good I think I've really had a nice experience though with doing it so far, and I'm excited for all the new places we can go from there.
Right.
Uh,
Because
gosh,
because one thing I've been doing for years in my area, there's another system that's called Pathfinder, um,
yeah.
and the publishing company behind that actually runs an organized playing system that actually
Mhm.
goes worldwide. I can play any number of characters out here, and as long as everything is legally kept track of by the rules of the game and by the rules of the organized play rules, I can take that character and play anywhere in the world. If I go to like Japan for example,
Mhm.
I find a group that's playing up there, and I'm obviously able to communicate effectively. I can run my character over there and play some games up there with them, and then I can go to like France and play a game over there with them, and still come back and play the same character here in the U.S.
Yeah.
But it always opens up so many opportunities as a player, and you can even volunteer to run games because they have a bunch of like pre-written sessions you can run, and it's always so fun because you get to meet so many more people, and obviously you get to have more access to there. You have a better chance to learn the rules, as well as being able to play. So I found that to be pretty fun. But for me, it's running
Mhm.
the games for my friends, where I really want to try to express the characters better, which is where I think voice actors can really excel. Like Ed Bosco obviously has done a fantastic job with that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Ed,
it's yeah.
God, Ed, hearing Ed Bosco and Has Been, especially like the whole, because it's funny. Like whenever I think of Alastor, I just think of that like he sounds like that 1920s radio guy
Hmm.
who covered the Hindenburg disaster, and it's just like, oh, the humanity, oh, it's so terrible, everybody. Like it's just so funny. And then hearing that like that baseball like radio filter voice that he has, like that always makes me laugh. That always makes me laugh. Uh,
And then you start
he's
hearing him from the Doom games, the Marauder and the Icon of Sin. I was like, this is the same guy.
That's the same thing. That's the thing I get whenever I listen to Michael in like when I hear him as Angel Dust in this one thing, and then I hear him in this other game where he's using more of his lower register, and I'm like, Michael, like, is that you? Like, I know he's in the server right now, but like if he came in and he just like, hey, he's like, y'all talking about me? Like, I don't know if he would, but if he did, that'd be really hilarious.
I'm not sure. He is quite an enigma of a personality.
He
It's kind of hard
is.
to figure out what he
Um,
does. Uh,
man.
yeah, he's fun, and that's like I said, that's kind of the main thing that I usually go after is like I said, it doesn't have to be voice actor specifically, but just having that energy for myself to be able to do these kind of things with other people is part of the
Yeah.
fun that I'm seeking. So that's probably the biggest reason that I decided to get into it is just for
Hmm.
those fun moments. Um, so yeah, I guess that'll go into the one of the last things that I want to ask before we close out is
Okay.
um, yeah, because we've covered a lot of things like where you got your start, your influence,
Mhm.
the kind of things that it's taught you, the influence that it's had on you. So I guess the last thing I want to ask you is there any advice that you want to give people in regards to voice acting, singing, cast, or when it comes to anything to do with direction, interacting, or being, or probably just life advice in general?
Um, I think the biggest thing I can give to any voice actors out there who are wanting to get into this and really want to just really find a way through it, I'd say take time to really figure out if it is for you. Like tread the waters, play around, have fun. Don't worry about like trying to reach big goals immediately because, you may not even like it if you start out immediately because, you want to make sure that it's really for you. And if you do really like it and you want to go forward, then take any opportunity to learn, to grow, listen to feedback from people, always listen to advice, just take any opportunity you can to learn. And I also say this with a from experience, like make sure if you do get out there, like always be courteous, be professional, and be kind to everybody you meet because a lot of times one of the best things about this community, it's not just the connections you make, it's the friendships. And I think that the friendships you make and the connections you form are the most wonderful in my opinion, especially knowing me and how I've met a lot of my friends through this. And we've gotten to the point where we've met up like IRL real times. So I think that's one of the best things. And really, the biggest, easiest thing I can say is just keep going. If you really enjoy this and you want to do it, you have every right to, and you should go for it.
Mhm.
That's the best advice I can give.
Definitely. I'm glad you were able to share that because
Thank you.
it's definitely something that's easily forgotten when you're so like focused on trying to accomplish something. I think it's easy to forget.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is.
Um, so I guess with that, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me today, Patrick.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be on here and to see all these awesome people everywhere. This is great. I'm really excited to be a part of this. This is great. Thank you.
I'm excited. I'm happy that there was a chance to have more perspective from somebody who's had some very good learning experiences of their own, especially a somewhat unique one for some of the things we've talked about today from your experiences.
Hmm.
So for
Yeah.
me, that's the important goal for me is getting those learning experiences out there, which is why I do this show for everybody to be able to learn something so that they can learn from those other experiences from others in regards to whatever specific field they're going for. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do appreciate you taking the time to to talk about these kind of things. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And with that, I'm going to be taking a second because apparently the remote app for Streamlabs is not working for me today. So there's going to be an awkward silence in the last, couple seconds here while I get to my computer to end the stream. But thank you all for tuning in today. Huge thank you to Patrick for joining me today on this interview. I hope you guys can tune in a couple weeks again because we've already got more guests lined up for all of you guys to learn from and get more experiences from. So keep an eye on our Twitter. You can also follow Patrick on his Twitter, which is linked in the description. And then the interview here will stay up as a video for you guys to share with other people you think can learn from this. So, definitely share it around, help other people learn, and I will see you guys all next time. Yeah, goodbye, and let me reach my thing. Remember, folks, get your spaces figured out so you can avoid this same issue that I'm dealing with.